In this lecture, we'll be discussing physical development in late adulthood. We have made it. We made it to the last stage of the lifespan. Late adulthood is the last stage or the last phase of the human lifespan. It begins at age 65 and lasts until death. Before the 20th century, most people died before they reached 65. So this late adulthood stage is a relatively new concept. At the beginning of the course, we differentiated between lifespan and life expectancy. So I wanted to come and revisit these concepts again as we think about how long is a normal life. Genes determine a maximum lifespan for all living species, including humans. And so when we think about the maximum lifespan, this is the oldest possible age that members of a species can live. For humans, we believe that under ideal circumstances, the maximum lifespan is approximately between 120 and 125 years old. And we get this number based on the oldest living person that we can document, right? So sometimes we've had people claim to be older, but we don't have documentation to back that up. Now we can contrast the maximum lifespan with the average life expectancy. Average life expectancy is the number of years that an average newborn in a particular population group is likely to live. So we would have an average life expectancy for, let's say, a baby born this year. And so what we see is that the average life expectancy in the US is about 76 years old. And it's slightly younger for men, slightly older for women. So about 73 years old for men, about 79 years old for women. And these are numbers from 2024. So we talked previously about this idea of our bodies gradually declining related to biological aging. This occurs to everyone, and it occurs to all parts of our body. But the rate of decline is highly variable between individuals. So the aging process is something that's evident from adolescence on. So before adolescence, we're sort of developing into our bodies, and then we're starting to see some decline as we get into our adulthood years. We can differentiate between two different types of aging, primary and secondary aging. So primary aging, these are the universal and irreversible physical changes that occur to all living creatures as they grow older. Secondary aging are specific physical illnesses or conditions that become more common with aging, but are caused by health habits, genes, and other influences that are going to vary from person to person. So there are going to be genetic predispositions. You might have heart disease that runs in your family, but then you might behave in certain ways or have certain health habits that make you more at risk and are going to combine with that genetic predisposition to make it even more likely that you're going to have heart disease. Or perhaps you recognize that genetic predisposition and you're going to have very healthy habits that are going to try to reduce that genetic predisposition. So as we get into late adulthood, we're going to start to see a great deal of variance that's going to continue to widen, where you could see an 80-year-old and they could be in very great health, and then you could see another 80-year-old that maybe because of their health habits or their genes or a combination of such, they're in very poor health. So when we think about the physical changes that are happening in late adulthood, obviously physical appearance from age 65 and up, we're going to continue to see physical changes in our bodies. This can sometimes, for people, have emotional detrimental effects, because in many cultures, especially in the US and in Western culture, aging is not something that is viewed in a positive light, especially for women. And so people, as they are seen as becoming physically older in appearance, they can be treated in stereotypic ways that maybe are less positive. In particular, we're going to see changes in skin and hair. The skin is going to reveal some of the first signs of aging. It's going to become drier, thinner, and less elastic. Less collagen production is happening. And so, as we talked about some of the changes that were happening in midlife, we're going to continue to see them, and they're going to sort of escalate, right? The wrinkles, the loss of collagen, even sagging on the face can happen, and drier skin, thinner skin. We can start to see age spots. Skin is going to become thinner, and so you may want to think about like your grandma or great grandma, how she might bruise very easily. That can be partially due to medication, but also due to the thinner skin that's happening. Hair is more likely to be turning grayer, then may turn white. Most people in late adulthood are going to start seeing their hair thinning. We're going to see some additional changes in body shape and size that are going to become visible and noticeable. As we talked about in midlife, we become shorter. We're losing about a centimeter every decade. Older adults tend to weigh less than they did in middle age. They tend to be losing a lot of their muscle, and so that is going to kind of change not only their body shape, but also their body weight. There's going to be a redistribution of fat. It tends to be, for most people, going to be more likely to collect in their torso. And then we're going to see changes in muscle and movement, right? So I mentioned before, less muscle. This can indicate weakness. We're going to see thinner bones, increased risk of fracture, and some disease onset is also going to happen. Less flexibility, slower and more difficulty of doing certain movements, poor balance. Many of these changes are mostly due to a sedentary lifestyle and not necessarily because of a certain age. And so if people are continuing to be very active, they can offset and not have many of these changes occur to them. Arthritis and osteoporosis are two quite common issues that people are going to be experiencing in late adulthood. There are more than 100 different types of arthritis, but in general, we can think about arthritis as an inflammation of the joints that's accompanied by pain, stiffness, and movement problems. Osteoporosis is an extensive loss of bone. Women are 4 times more likely than men to get osteoporosis, and part of this has to do with hormones. We're also going to see a dulling of the senses. So if we think about all of our senses, vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, these are all going to become dulled. So we're going to become slower and less sharp with each decade. So we think about vision, our visual acuity is going to decrease. We're going to have less peripheral vision. We're no longer going to be able to adjust very quickly to changes in light. So going from a dark movie theater out into a bright outside is going to take our eyes longer to make that adjustment. Greater susceptibility to glare, less color discrimination. This is why sometimes people are going to be concerned about people in the late adulthood years continuing to drive. Cataracts is going to become more common, glaucoma. In terms of hearing, pitch discrimination is going to be less accurate, a loss of high and middle frequencies. About 15% of the population 65 and older are considered legally deaf, meaning that they have a decrease in hearing. Doesn't mean that they can't hear anything, but like a significant enough decrease in hearing to be considered legally deaf. And there can potentially be a degeneration of the cochlear. Even our smell is decreasing. So we're going to be less able to smell things in our environment, even our sense of taste. So sour and bitter tastes in particular are going to decrease. This is why sometimes people in late adulthood are going to prefer certain foods because they're not going to be able to taste the foods the same way that they did when they were younger. Our touch and pain is also going to be affected, especially in our extremities. So we're going to be able to detect touch less than our lower extremities, such as our ankles and our knees, than in our upper extremities, like our hands, shoulders, and wrists. And we're going to be less sensitive to pain. This is important. It's not that they are not experiencing pain, but they're going to be less sensitive. So if you took a pin and poked someone in late adulthood and took that same pin and poked someone in young adulthood, the neurons of someone in late adulthood are going to send those messages less efficiently. So they're going to feel that less, which can be dangerous because pain is a message to our body to say, oh, we need to pay attention to this. Now, technology can modify many of these losses, right? Glasses, hearing aids, eye surgery, but not all of them. When we get to late adulthood, activities of daily life become very important for us to be thinking about because it can become more difficult for us to continue to do these activities of daily living without assistance. So activities of daily living, or ADLs, are just basic self-care activities, such as bathing yourself, this is taking a shower or a bath, dressing yourself, going to the bathroom without assistance, getting into or out of a bed or chair without assistance, walking without assistance, getting outside of your house or apartment, even feeding yourself. So when we think about this, physical or cognitive declines or disabilities can impact these ADLs. And these ADLs are things that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about the needs of people in late adulthood, especially as we get, if we see physical declines or cognitive declines in them. We need to be thinking about who is going to be there to help them. Is it going to be family members that are going to step up and being able to go over and help their parents or their aunts or uncles or their grandparents complete these basic self-care activities? Or will they be hiring a certified nursing assistant to come in to help with these activities? Will there be some other type of system that's worked out? But these can really change the quality of someone's life if they're left alone and not able to complete these activities on their own, or are struggling, or are made to feel any type of guilt or shame because they're not able to complete these by themselves. And so it's really something important to be thinking about when we're thinking about our population in late adulthood, to make sure that we are giving them the supports that they need and allowing them to continue to complete these activities of daily living with whatever amount of assistance they need in order to retain their dignity and their sense of independence.